Phillips Beach Plaza, Phillips bought them off.
Yeah, we got to get equipment out. Do they have valet?
We don't really need to get the equipment out. What time? Coke time. Yeah. The last dinner 3 years ago.
It's okay.
George Ross. I'm with the life savings. I'm with the life savings. And I'm going to the next weekend for the guards in 1970. I think it'd be a little bit faster. Well, that's what, smells were Peggy. Come over here.
Bus.
And they brought all the equipment in the car, and they're all movie people.
Just see.
Now I want to see him interview Lucky's head cut off.
Well, you got a room.
My neighbor restores old pictures, and he lives in this big house. He's got piles and piles and piles of pictures. So I went over to help him move something 2 summers ago, and I lift up a pile of pictures and I put it down, and the next picture is a picture of the Beach Patrol. But the only person I recognized was the cat guy. I mean, this is from like, So when I go to his house for his birthday, I take him this picture, and he gets up and goes to the back, and Mrs. Craig said, I bet he doesn't have that. When he came out, he didn't have that picture. It was from the 40s. Okay. But
I brought 4 of them.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
But apparently he's got every year, but maybe just a couple of years.
I brought 43, 44, and 45. Peggy's got one hanging there.
There's one in there, there's 48, there's a blank room that don't have anything on it, I think. There's a 48, there's a blank room. There's no date. 48 has a date.
My wife's family.
Yeah, because I can't see anything.
Not only that,
But look at
okay.
We're going to go check it.
Okay.
I tried to get Sam to come down.
Okay.
I had dinner with him the other night, and we tried to, and he just won't do
I
it.
played gin with him.
Do you? He said you
times a
did.
week.
Yeah.
I started off.
All right, madam.
And y'all made
See
it.
you all later.
Good.
He was one of the announcers.
Sorry.
Loud music, there's no kids, there's eyeballs. What? I found one of the guys that started in the 60s. He goes, man, I don't want to miss that. So I got a car. All right, I got to find some clothes to wear. See you, Evans. How you doing? All right. See you all later. Okay, all right.
I'm trying. I'm trying to figure out a way not to let this camera wiggle. I just found it.
They're making movies.
Now,
Reading at night, but I think it makes it look sort of like infrared-ish.
Leftovers of this before.
We can read the book when we go to lunch. Maybe we need a tripod just to. So we're gonna do it out here, and the tabletop's not gonna work.
I saw it and he said, I don't think I can make it because I got a bad knee. I said, I'm coming from Maine, you're on 130th Street. Don't give me a second. Well, I'm thinking.
Very old.
Try to get that total. Peggy, what are you going to have to drink?
Wait, I thought I'd have a Brass Balls BJ.
What does BJ stand for? Betty James?
Big job.
Big
It's
job.
a big job, but
Big job.
someone's
That's
got to
what I
do
thought.
it.
Yeah, that's right. Good.
Or big,
Okay.
could be Big John.
That's it, please. was on the first Ocean City Beach Patrol about 1932 or 33. And he used to bartend here, he was telling us the other night, at the Majestic Hotel, where they only served beer, by the way. And he remembers the storm of 33. He stayed at Kay's Hotel in the basement, and he left Kay's at a time when he saw a lamppost coming down 6th Street attached to a boardwalk. That's how bad the storm was. Cut. Ready?
So, yes, was it, this was the old beach club?
This was the beach club right here at Shills. It was called Shills Beach Club, and he had a bingo parlor next to it. There was Jackson's Casino, where I worked as a bartender. And this beach, which was 9th Street, I had from 1945, 46, 47, 48, and 49, 5 years. And in those days, most of the drunks would come out of the beach club and the casino, and we'd have some altercations every now on the beach. And one in particular I remember was a gal got out there and she was kind of falling in the surf, and I grabbed her and pulled her in, and I said, "You really ought to go get, go to your room or something." And she started using very, very foul language. So I dragged her up here, and we sat on the boardwalk, and a crowd got around, especially little kids, and she continues to use every 4-letter word in the book. And finally, I just picked up a handful of sand and dropped it down her throat while she was screaming at me, and that was the end of her conversing. And meanwhile, the police came. There were 2 policemen in those days, Pepsi and Pete, and I was deputized because of all the problems I have out here, and it was fun.
And how long did you bartend?
I bartended at Jackson's for 2 seasons. A lot of the guards, we worked every other night, so that when we had an off night, we'd come to Jackson's and get free drinks from the bartenders who were on the beach patrol.
Were you old enough to bartend? Or
Now,
fake ID, or was it
none of
Joe
us were
DeWart?
ever old enough. They didn't check ID. I mean, if you looked old enough and you could do the job, you did it. And you get $5 a night.
The whiskey sours were.
All the whiskey sours you could capture.
And how'd you do that?
You made whiskey sours in a shaker, and you pour them in these little stemmed glasses with a cherry and an orange, and pass them up, and you put the remainder in the milkshake glass into a paper cup, and you keep adding to it. And at the end of the night, when the bar closed, you took your whiskey sour out and had a party.
Was it a real casino?
I always gave mine away because I really never drank them.
Was it a real casino?
No gambling, no, but they had a band and slot machines. They had slot machines in front, but not a casino.
Nothing in the back?
No. That was up the beach. They always had a place in the back with blackjack. And that was,
So what happened there? Did you ever work up there?
I worked up there as a bouncer when I was about 19, and for a guy named Gordy and John Dale Schall owned it. I can't remember the name of it. And they had a little gambling room in the back. And after checking cards and making sure everybody was 21 when they came in, I would sometimes get called upon to entertain a wife or date at the bar while the guy in the back was losing his shirt at blackjack, and get paid an extra $3 for being a shill.
And where was this? Where was that place?
I'll get the name of it later.
You remember what street?
Well, it was on the road, the beach road that went to...
After the boardwalk ended?
Oh yeah, this was up around whatever, might be 20 or 30th Street now.
You can't interrupt him. Ask him about Pepsi and Pete.
So what about Pepsi and Pete?
Pepsi and Pete, one was big, one was little, and they used to come up to Jackson's Casino. We'd be outside, and one day, one of the guards, his name was Fuzzy Foster, John Foster, had a few drinks, and he went in and picked up a slot machine and started out with it. And Pepsi, or Pete, came in and saw what was happening and started to draw a gun and one of the other guards was eating watermelon in one of the booths, I remember, and came over and pushed the watermelon down over Pete or Pepsi's head. And John dropped the slot machine, and we all ran. Crazy. But they didn't even get shot. It's amazing.
There were only 2 police in all of Ocean City then?
That's all they needed. You know, we had 20 blocks and everybody knew everybody. Very few people were in a car. They didn't have to patrol by car. And the main place they had to patrol was this block right here, which is where most of the booze was done, although there were other bars down there. Irish House down there.
So did you guard right near where this beach?
I guarded this beach
For how many years?
5 years.
Oh, all 5 years.
All 5 years. And then the others, I was at the Royalton for a year and 6th Street for a year.
So everybody walked everywhere, huh?
7 years.
So what were you saying? You were talking earlier about the locals.
We had local guards who were from Ocean City, and Fish Powell was one who became mayor of Ocean City, and Jim Kelly, who you'll meet tonight. Cutie Savage, who was a character to say the least, and Luke Parsons was one. I can't remember some of the other. There were several of them.
They had all the beaches.
They had
down
all
there?
the beaches down by the pier because they lived down in that area, and they'd like to be near home for lunch and so forth, just to be able to walk to the beach. And in '45, I was 16, and the Mayor Trimper, fired everybody on the beach patrol except a guy named Buddy Booz and Wilson Fuster and myself. And he called my father one time in the spring and said, how would my father feel if I were made captain of the beach patrol? And my father talked to me and then called him back and said, do it. And so in the beginning of '45, I hired, I guess, 10 or 12 high school boys that I knew. And we got ourselves in shape because we knew we were young and we knew we maybe didn't have the experience that older guards would have. And a former guard came back from the invasion of Normandy, and the 82nd Airborne had broken his back, Tommy Price. And he had taught a lot of us how to swim back in the 1939, 1940. And Tommy said, I need exercise on the bike. I really can't swim. And how about letting me be captain for the rest of the season and you pick out your beach? And I picked out 9th Street State. Then Bob Craig came in 1946 out of the war, and he was captain for decades.
You don't have to, but I mean, it's only from that point of view.
Well, I could do that. In 1943, 44, the guards worked 7 days a week, and we got paid something like $11. I forget what it was. And there wasn't a lot of money around, so in 45, I went up and down the beach and asked the various hotels who had a guard in front if they would serve, who served lunch, to serve the guard a sandwich and a Coca-Cola or iced tea. And I remember I had the Royalton Beach, and the waiters used to come out of the Royalton, which was owned by Harry Kelly, who had been captain of the beach patrol back in the 30s. And they would come out and serve petty pours, or whatever you call them, under the umbrellas to everybody with Cokes and iced tea. And at the end, the waiters would gather up the sandwiches, and then they'd bring me over a plate full of sandwiches and a watered down iced tea, and the sandwiches would all have sand on them. And I would crunch on them, and that was very tasty. There wasn't any problem. I gobbled it right down. But the other hotels were always very good about supplying lunches to the guards.
What about
Guard oil?
Yeah.
Guard oil.
Oh, guard oil. Again in 1945, because we weren't making a lot of money, we used to meet at the Coast Guard station down at Caroline Street in the morning, and somebody came up with the idea that there were a lot of bottles, and I don't think there were many tubes of sunburn cream, but there were bottles that were left on the beach. so we started gathering all the bottles, and we got a milk can, a 5-gallon can, and we empty all the bottles into the milk can, and then we would put iodine in it to give it a certain dark color. And I went to Dr. Townsend down on the South Store and got cases of little bottles and labels. And we'd go to the yard stand during the morning and pour this stuff into our little bottles. Somebody would write out guard oil, lick them, put them on there, and we'd take half a dozen bottles to work. And we were all very brown because we didn't use any sunburn lotion. And people would come up and say, "How'd you get so brown?" Guard oil, 50 cents. That's what we made a little extra money there. And iodine, by the way, will make you brown even if you don't feel like getting brown. Or even if you're brown, it'll make you browner. Till you take a shower.
There's one other story there. I just thought about that. Put it on standby. Okay.
When I came down here in this, I guess, June of 1945, some of the old guards had come back from 44 and 43 who I had worked with. And one in particular named Gordon Shipley, who for some reason we called 88 Keys. He was a wonderfully exuberant, happy-go-lucky guy. Drank a lot of beer here at the Beach Club. And he was very upset that I, at 16, had gotten the job, and he, at whatever, 21, had not. And so he went to Mayor Trimper, and he said, "How can you have this kid be captain of the beach patrol when I'm older and better, and a better swimmer?" So the mayor very nicely said, "Why don't you swim, Casey, and the winner becomes captain." So we pushed off of the pier, and the rule was you had to start out in a stroke that you finished in. You couldn't change stroke, and we swam to the commander. And he, unbeknown to me, he used to call me the milkshake kid because I and he had made bets of $400 or $500, which was a fortune in those days, up and down the beach with Jimmy Jarman, who was on the beach, umbrella stands and so forth. And I beat him by 4 jetties. And he left town that day, welched on all the bets, and went back to Washington. Never heard from him again. But he was a nice guy.
He's a senator now, right?
Oh, he's a senator now?
No, he's not a senator. He's George Bush's advisor now.
Okay. How about the story you just told us about the hardest day?
What?
About how hard it was to have to ask that maid to leave the beach. You were telling us about the day that was one of the most difficult things you had to do was
Ask them when people come on the beach.
There was it was on this beach, and a guy came up, a father, and was asking me something, what's the temperature of the water, or carrying on conversation. And his little daughter, to our right, had a kite, and she was just starting to let it out, and she let go of the string. And the kite started to go right in front of us, and he reached up to grab the string and fell down dead. And he was staying at the George Washington Hotel, now the Mirage. And I remember I had to go up there and find his wife. And we put a blanket over him, and somebody took care of the little girl. And that was a tough day. So it wasn't all fun.
And how about
it was totally fun, but it wasn't all fun.
And how about when the beaches was the beaches segregated in the 40s?
Yes, they were segregated. They had a beach at the end of the boardwalk past the Commander Hotel that the blacks were obviously allowed, because it was sand dunes from there on up. And they could go up there and nobody bothered them. I mean, if I was like 50 feet, but if a black weren't in a bathing suit, our orders were to ask her to leave the beach and put on a uniform. And she wasn't really allowed to go down to the water's edge take his shoes off and hold, you know, onto the hand of a little boy or a little girl. And we had to do that. That was lousy things you had to do. And now, in 2003, things are a lot different. And all those, thank goodness, for the better.
What you meant to say was if they came down in a bathing suit, if they're not in the
I'm sorry.
and also the part about if they put their toes in the water, how everybody would jump, just be appalled.
So
Yeah.
start over. Tell the story again, please.
You have to do a take two on that.
Please, sir.
In the 40s, the blacks had their own beach north of, I think really at the end of the boardwalk, north of the Commander Hotel. And they could go up there and nobody bothered them. But they weren't out on the boardwalk unless they were pushing a stroller. They were normally in white uniforms. If mother and father wanted the nanny to come out onto the beach, she had to come out in a uniform. If she came out in a bathing suit, we had to ask her to go put the uniform on. And if she wanted to take the child to the water's edge, the parent really had to take it because the blacks weren't allowed to put their feet in the water. And that occurred while somebody would come up to the guard stand and say, would you take care of that? We played donkey. The guards, and there were only, maybe 12 to 15 guards, and we were like a little family, very buddy-buddy. And we used to play football on the beach and so forth, and one of the things we used to do was go down behind the school on 3rd Street, and some guy would bring in donkeys, and we'd play what they call donkey baseball or donkey polo. And when you hit a ball, you jumped on the donkey to first base, only the donkey was trained not to go to first base. He would go to 3rd base or something like that. And water polo was the same thing. The donkey was trained not to go near the ball. You had a broom in your hand, and you're trying to reach over and almost. Other thing we used to do was go up to the Dominican summer house, which is behind the Beach Plaza Hotel, and I think still stands. But that was a Dominican retreat from Washington, and we would play baseball against the Dominican brothers and the novices or priests and so forth. And we always thought, well, it's going to be a very tame game because we're playing these really nice guys and so forth. Well, some of them had gone to Texas A&M or prior to joining the seminary, and it was supposed to be touch football, and as soon as the ball would snap, you'd get a handful of sand in your face, and then you'd get an elbow. And that got to be a weekly ritual of playing ball and skin, sun, whatever you call it, sandburns all over the place. But afterwards, the head guy would cut open about 2 dozen cantaloupes and put vanilla ice cream in them. And after we took a hot shower in their basement while we sit and talk, and we had fun.
Microphone test, testing 1 2 3. Microphone test 1 2 3.
Microphone test 1 2 3. Microphone test 1 2 3. Well, tell me your name, where you're from, and when you were a lifeguard.
Skeeter Anderson from Lexington, Kentucky. I was here in 54, 55, 56, and 57.
And you were, tell me, you were a lifeguard in Ocean City.
I was a lifeguard in Ocean City those years.
Okay. How did you become a lifeguard? Tell me the story of how it ended up that you became a lifeguard.
In high school, I was a good swimmer, and then I went to Reading, Pennsylvania, got my aquatic license to teach. I spent 2 weeks there, and it came open up here, and this is where I wanted to come, and I thought I'd give it a shot after I got out of Korea.
So you came here directly from the war?
Yeah, well, after about 6 months, yeah.
So how old were you when you became a lifeguard?
21.
Tell me, I became a lifeguard.
I became a lifeguard when I was 21.
What were current events at the time? What was headline news when you were a lifeguard?
Elvis, Bill Haley in the comics.
Oh, sorry, not allowed to laugh.
Okay, since the camera operator is laughing while you're talking,
Yes.
can you tell me, just say, at the time what mattered was, or entertainment was?
Well, what mattered was it was good to be back on this soil among people and just not men, and the war was over. And there's a lot of musical things coming out that I didn't know about, like Elvis Presley, Bill Haley in the comics, Buddy Morrow, just things like that. And that's where we had a lot of our dances down at the pier at the end of the season.
What were those dances like?
Wonderful. We sold brochures, and people behind us, the girls probably, the waitresses would give us $50 for half a page, the hotel would give us $100, some of the restaurants would give us $50 or $100, take out a full page, and everybody did it on the beach. And we pooled all the money together, and it was based on how many years you were here. Then we'd have the dates, and we'd charge $5 per person, and they could brown bag, you could bring your own, and we'd end up at the end of the season where some of us could take home $1,500, which was a lot of money.
Wow. What were those dances like?
Fun.
What happened at them?
Everybody had a ball. Just, they enjoyed themselves.
Was there live music?
Oh yes, all live music. Everybody had a good time. There was always some characters on the lifeguard station that put on extra shows. A couple of them are not here no more.
Do you remember any of those?
Hawk, yeah, he died about 30 days ago.
Oh.
He was a character. And everybody had their own names. Everybody got their own nicknames from the beach.
Like what?
The tree, the dove, the bear. Charlie McCullen was 6'8" and a half, 300 pounds. We called him the bear.
All right, so would you tell a story about, you were saying some guards brought a little extra color to these dances. Anything in particular you're willing to divulge?
No, not willing.
Okay, so what was a typical day like as a lifeguard?
Well, get up 7:30, be at the beach at 8. We may have to go for a mile swim, then come back, talk, go get dressed, and be on the beach by 9 o'clock. In between that, you got to milk a couple of donuts before you hit the beach. Because we only made $37.50 after taxes per week.
And once you hit the beach, what happened in a normal day?
The people would come out, you just sit there in the beach and you talk to the people, and then once they got in the water, you just kind of scan the beach, always looking for the heads. If some head was missing, you check it out and make sure that person was out. But we still do it, sitting here right now. All of us will be sitting up there and we'll be scanning the water. It's a habit.
That's great. Did you, I know you guys had probably hundreds of rescues in a few years.
55 was the biggest for us. That's when Hurricane Connie came in.
Tell me about Hurricane Connie.
Well, they evacuated everybody except the policemen and lifeguards and a few waitresses. That's about it. Probably 500,000 people went off the beach. And in the first 2 days afterwards, we had to take ropes and come up the boardwalk because you had to wear pants or the sand would cut your legs. And then it kind of still was a little stormy, and then about the second day, third day, people started coming out of the beach. And my Daddy Wagner and I were walking up to our beach on 1st and 2nd, and we heard this holler, and that was at 8:30. We came out of the water at 5 o'clock. We picked out 57 people on our beach alone. I think there was something like 500 and some, 500 to 600 that day alone. Normally you got 1 or 2 a week, it's a big deal, but we were in. Captain Cricket just set up our point like that. We'd take them in and bring them into our waist, throw them in, and go right back in the water.
So how do you feel at the end of a day like that?
Exhausted, but proud.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So tell me again, at the end of a day like that.
You were tired, but you were proud that you could have helped somebody. It didn't bother you until after it was all over, then you shook what could have happened.
Did you ever have any losses?
No. No. Very, 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 very lucky. I'd say most of our losses, and we did have a couple, was people that had heart attacks and went straight down. Obese people that were very heavy get out there and the water was too cold. Because the water would get cold after hurricanes. I mean, water was like 52 degrees.
Any particularly tough saves or saves where people would really fight back or anything?
Yeah, a few. There was a couple guys that were high and they got in trouble, and it took a little time to get them in, but we kind of subdued them in certain ways, and they listened to us.
Do you think in general you had a certain level of respect beyond just the average handsome guy on the beach?
Oh, I wouldn't say handsome, but yeah, I think they respected us. A lot of people, once we left the beach, because they didn't know. Most people would come down year after year, and then when we would leave the beach, they would leave the beach. Because you need that, and you have to respect that water out there.
Tell us what you were telling me inside in the bar about trying out with Captain Craig.
Oh, well, Bob used to give us tests. Not everybody, Lucky would give some of it, and George gives some of it, and some of the others, but he gave me mine. And of course, we had a nickname for Captain Bob, the Walrus. Now, you look at him today, he's frail. Back then, he was like 265, always riding that bicycle up and down the beach. And I broke he reached for me in the front, and I broke those, turned him around and everything. Then he said, turn around. So he come from me from behind, and we're about 12 foot of water. Then all at once he just puts his legs around me and locks them. Well, his legs were bigger than my waist. So I could break his arm, but we were going nowhere, and he always said, just tap me on the leg if you cannot break the hold. So I used to stand underwater a long time, so I just kind of worked my hands back into the private parts of him and squeezed real hard, and his legs came open. He said, that'll work.
Oh, that's great. Other than that one, any dangerous moments that you remember for yourself or for other people that you got them out of, or for other guards?
After Hurricane Connie came through, we were all out here swimming. We had to use flippers to get through the surf. You could not get through. I don't care how strong you were, you wouldn't go get through it. And we were riding waves a quarter of a mile out on our stomach. Porpoise right with us. And one of the little boys we had was called Mumbles. Couldn't speak real clearly, but great swimmer. But we'd start on 7th Street, and before you know it, you'd be at 2nd or 1st. And he got caught underneath the pier, and he panicked. And of course, he grabbed the pier, and when he grabbed the pier, those barnacles just got to him, and we just had to go in, put our foot on the thing, and just hit him, and brought him out. It took about 100 stitches in his body, but he was fine. 2 weeks later, he was fine.
How old were you when that happened?
21, 22.
When you look back now, because I know at 45, I look back at 25 and thought how smart I was then, and now I realize just what an idiot I was. Do you think now when you look back at your age, all the responsibility you had, what do you think about that?
I accepted it. It was fun.
But you don't now look at a 21-year-old on the beach and think there's no way my 7-year-old's going to go swimming under the auspices of that person.
If he's got his insignia on, his instructors, he qualifies, yeah, why not?
Okay. What about embarrassing moments?
Oh, we won't go there. No way. No way.
How about, did you...
We've had, I'll go back. Well, it was one late July, and it was a couple married couples just got married, and they were on the beach. And those days, a lot of those were one-piece bathing suits, not two-piece. And it was a couple who were married, and they were playing in the surf, and the surf was getting a little rough, and she forgot to tie her tie. And all at once, she turned around, and it hit her. Well, her top goes all the way to her waist. and her husband is pulling the straps up, trying to stuff, and we're just about to fall off the lifeguard stand. Of course, we all kind of clapped a little bit.
What about girls?
They had a lot of nice kids up here. They're all going to college, come in work in the summer to make some money to go back to school. I'd say we probably had the best bunch of kids that I've ever seen. They were close. There was no rowdy type person, male or female. We didn't allow it on our beach parties. And a lot of kids that were 21 didn't get to drink. We wouldn't take that responsibility. But I'd say as far as the girls, they were great. They would bring us sandwiches. They would bring us something for lunch, you know, sometimes. They were just real close kids.
So did you have any big romances based upon being, do you think there are girls you met because you were a lifeguard?
Some yes, some not. But some nice romances.
I tell my stepson all the time that a really smart thing to do if he wants to meet girls is be a lifeguard, because no girl can resist a lifeguard. What do you think about that idea?
It's all in the personality. You can be a real handsome person and have no personality. You'll be the most beautiful woman in the world. If you can't talk, how good are you? I think it's just the fun. When you're a teenager and you're in your 20s, you're learning about life, you don't know much. I've had an advantage over a lot of them. I'd been through a hell of a lot. So I had aged 20 years, real quick. But this was probably the happiest times of my young life. I'd never forget it. Wouldn't change it for nothing.
So that was probably a pretty good way to come out of a war, huh?
Yeah, but if I talk to most of the guys, that was some of the happiest days of their life. You know, you were free, you worked, you had no responsibility except to yourself, putting your ways through school. I was fortunate. I ended up the GI Bill and scholarship. But it was that time that everybody got together and just had a great time. Like the old song says, see you next summer. And everybody couldn't wait till next summer.
So what brought you to this? Is this the first reunion you've come to?
Yes. The other one I couldn't come to because it was business. It was on the same weekend in the furniture market in North Carolina, and that's what business I am, and I travel for 4 companies. And I just couldn't afford to lose that type of money. I would have loved to have been here, but I couldn't.
What brought you to this one?
Well, I'm getting ready to retire, and I wanted to see some of the guys I have not seen, and a lot of them are coming in, and it's been worth it.
So, have you kept in touch with these guys over the years?
A lot of them we did. I didn't know where they're at. I'd see Captain Craig every now and then when I'd come up. Maybe I was up for George Schoaf's when he died of cancer. He was with us back then. He became the captain after Captain Craig when he retired. And George was one of these guys that did not smoke. He didn't have a beer, but he was like Hulk. Hulk didn't drink it, didn't smoke either, but they both died of cancer. And I came up to his eulogy and gave a few words. Yeah.
How do you think being a guard affected the rest of your life?
It was a stepping stone. It gave you responsibilities real quick. And you did have a responsibility for everybody was on your beach, whether small or big. And there was a lot, big ones you could watch them. There was always some small child, 3, 4 years old. Mother didn't watch him. He wanders off. She's panically. We get the kid. Somebody bring him to us. We get up on the guard stand. We'd hold him up. We'd blow the whistle. Or we'd send semaphore. We got a boy, David, age 4. His mother's name is so-and-so. Tell her he's on 2nd Street. That's the way that we went. Because the guard stands were probably 100 to 150 yards apart. So you couldn't yell up there. We didn't have walkie-talkies, so we just said semaphore.
Do you still remember semaphore?
Oh, yeah. Of course, we used to say a lot of things on semaphore to Captain Craig. Would be on the beach, and he'd put his little flag down, and he said, other people understand what y'all said, because we couldn't tell all the things we said. So we got caught.
Okay, John.
You were talking about living like at the old police station, kind of like in a barracks sort of thing.
We live.
Back, and just talk about, you know, how you hung out with the guys after work, or your living arrangements. Did you work jobs?
Oh yes,
after the night, that kind of thing.
We a lot of us, because we all of us lived in barracks. You had you had the bunk bed, top, lower, and everybody stayed there except Mitch Mariano, or Mariano's, because his parents lived here and had two big restaurants, so he stayed home. And we had got a lot of fun, and yeah, a lot of guys babysit. There was a lot of people wanting to lifeguards babysit with their young kids, and a lot of us worked. I worked right over there. It used to be Bob Ching's Chinese and American place, where the safari is. And I would work from 6:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning for $2 an hour. And of course they would feed us, and we'd get a couple beers every now and then. We were older. Then we'd bust tables sometimes, and the gals would give us a little money. So we had a good time.
Are there other perks? I mean, say you had a car accident. Would it matter that you were a lifeguard? Say you stayed out too late and...
No.
And then talk about sort of in the 50s where the boardwalk went to the manor.
We never went, anything past 21st Street was like going out with the seagulls, because there was nobody there. And we used to go to beach parties on 55th Street. Back then you could have bought it for $5,000. They built Bobby Baker's carousel there. You know what that cost.
So what were beach parties like?
Fun. We'd cook, take stuff, build a fire, put rocks, leaves, do shrimp, purple passions in a barrel.
What's purple passion?
Gin, grapefruit juice. Hawk used to get a big old, we used to call them S-cans. Put ice in half of it. Everybody put a pint of gin, 2 cans of grape juice.
And these parties were at night, I take it.
Oh yeah.
So
8 o'clock.
And how many people would be at these parties?
At least half the guards are better.
So when you see the signs now that say no, and then there's a list 20 things long, no fires, no balls, no dogs, no blah, blah, blah. How does that compare with when you were a guard?
Ours a lot more fun because there's a lot more people, a lot more condos, high rises. I don't think a lot of people realize that Ocean City is the second largest city in Maryland. Baltimore is number 1. When I was here, it was 10,000 people, and that was during the summer, 5,000 during the winter. But we would have 500,000 people on the beach on weekends.
How did you get here physically?
I drove my '53 Chevrolet that I got from Mustard and Outpay.
Where'd you drive it from?
Radford, Virginia, where I was raised.
So the Bay Bridge was built in '54?
You had to come across the Kiptopeke Ferry. Took 2 hours to get across, $5.
Did the opening of the Bay Bridge increase the number of people here by a lot? Did it lead to a lot of growth in the industry here?
Sure it did, because people from Virginia could come right up, stay at Newport News, Hampton, Richmond, could come right straight up through there.
I think that's good.
When did the jetties go in? Were they in when you were here?
No, I think the jetties came in after a hurricane came through in the 70s or 80s, and it really tore up the beach. And that's when they started putting rocks out in there so it wouldn't shift the sand. Because I know a lot down 2nd Street, it was all the way back up. We was like 140 yards to the water.
What was the beach like when you were here? Was it wide?
Oh yeah, wide, deep. Mine was one of the deepest and widest.
And did you have the same beach every year?
Yeah.
Wait, tell me if you could just tell me all together what beach you had, and then tell that it was the widest and the deepest.
Well, 2nd Street, right from the Plimhammon and Colonial at that time, and it was probably from the boardwalk to the water. It was probably 150 yards. And we'd always pull our lifeguard stand, we'd put them on our back and drag them up to maybe 100 yards. So nobody would get on them out in the water and turn them over, you know. So in the mornings we had to pick them up, drag them back to our little spot, wipe the sand off, and put your lotion on, get ready for the day.
How did you end up with the widest, deepest beach?
It was just one of those. There was some down towards the pier were pretty close to same, but I'd say 1st Street, 2nd Street probably was down to the pier was the widest part of it at that time. It was all like this all the way up through here.
What about natural phenomenon, like say water funnels and sharks and giant manta rays and whales, anything like that?
Never saw them. They were here. I didn't see them. They were none. I'm not saying they might not be some, but they didn't have much of a shark problem. I don't think sharks were a big problem here.
Okay, I think that's it. I'm your motion control.
Anderson from Kentucky, and Jim Lucy from North Carolina.
Lucky Jordan.
Lucky Jordan.
Gettysburg.
Titusville. Yeah. He's still selling conch shells down there in Titusville. And so we have a good turnout and good representation. And Els was the original architect from the last gathering.
Yeah, that's right. Hey.
Magic to me. When I come back here, I tell you, I'm going to get it fixed.
I'll add your cheap.
Well, it's a nice rush to come back up here. Barbara told me this over. She said, "Yeah, we'll go back there."
Somebody opened the door.
Over here.
Good.
I'd like to recognize Captain Craig.
Yeah.
Captain Craig over the years, of course, was our mentor and our coach, and was working boss that was handling a bunch of crazy
Group that are not with us this year. If you're trying to for just a moment.
Photographer. He's covered every nude beach in the Caribbean.
Phone calls, and there are lots of costs in it. So to help Ed pay for the expenses, he says he shouldn't have to pay that money. Thank you, Bob.
You about killed me.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
can I
Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I forgot this gentleman in the back, who is Jack Horner, the gentleman much in the back there. He came up from Titusville, Florida. Flew up to BWI, 1935.
Bob Magdeberger was sitting right out here. He was a veterinarian from up in Cecil County, is gone. And Warren Williams, who was still on the patrol after 30-some years, he worked down at Wallops Island, and he had used all his vacation time and would come and help Butch Arvin. He was
here last year.
Lieutenant, he was here last year. And Russ Hawkins, dear Russ Hawkins, was here last year. One of the good old boys, probably one of the best good old boys that any of us ever knew or ever met. And I met with Russ October a year ago. He came up from Florida where he lived, and I met him for lunch. And he was on his way to Michigan to see his daughter, and he was big into kayaking, and he would actually be in seniors kayaking events and all. And he says, I'm getting a little bit out of breath kayaking, you better go check the doctor. And he went to the doctor, had lung cancer, never smoked a cigarette in his life. And give Lucky the ashes or to send them up, but they never arrived. We were going to have a little sermon. As Jerry Shue said today, Russ wanted his ashes spread on the beach. Jerry Shue said, my God, with the wind blowing, Russ would have been all over the beach. He would have been all over.
Oh, you ought to be.